The Grey King by Susan Cooper. 2. The Sleepers. The Pleasant Lake. Will expected to be the only one sitting in the house at 5 in the morning, but his Aunt Jen was up before him. She gave him a cup of tea and a big slab of homemade bread and butter. "Cold out there early," she said. "You'll do better with something inside you." "Bread and butter tastes 5 times as good here as anywhere else," said Will. Glancing up as he chewed, he saw her watching him with a funny wry half-smile. "The picture of health you are," she said. "Just like your big brother Stephen at your age. Nobody would guess how ill you were not so long ago. But my goodness me, it's not exactly a rest cure we've been giving you. The fire and all this business with the sheep killing." "Exciting," said Will, muffled through a mouthful. "Well, yes," said Aunt Jen. "Indeed, in a place where nothing out of the ordinary ever happens, usually from one year's end to the next, I think I would have had enough excitement to be getting along with for now," Will said lightly and deliberately. "I suppose the last real stir was when Bran's mother came." "Ah," his aunt said. Her pleasant, cozy face was unreadable. "You've heard about that, have you? I suppose John Rowland's told you. He's a kind soul. Shown him our. No doubt he had his reasons. Tell me, Will, have you had some sort of quarrel with Bran?" Will thought. "And that's what you wanted to ask me with a cup of tea, because you are a kind soul too, and can feel Bran's distress, and I wish I could be properly honest with you." "No," he said, "but losing Cathal has been so bad for him that I think he just wants to be alone for a while." "Poor lad." She shook her head. "Be patient with him. He's a lonely boy, and had a strange life in some ways. It's been wonderful for him having you here, until this spoiled everything." A small pain shot through Will's forearm. He clutched it and found it came from the scar of the light, his burned-in brand. He said suddenly, "Did she never come back at all, ever, Auntie Jen? Bran's mother? How could she just go off and leave him like that?" "I don't know," his aunt said. "But no, there was no sign of her ever again. In 1 minute to go away forever. I think that must bother Bran a lot." She looked at him sharply. "Has he ever said anything about it?" "Oh, no, of course not. We've never talked about that. I'm just sure it must bother him underneath." "You're a funny boy yourself," said his aunt curiously. "Sometimes you sound like an old man. Comes from having so many brothers and sisters older than you, I suppose. Perhaps you understand Bran better than most boys could." She hesitated for a moment, then drew her chair closer. "I will tell you something," she said, "in case it might help Bran. I know you have sense enough not to tell him about it. I think Gwen, his mother, had some great trouble in her life past that she could do nothing about, and that because of that, she felt she had to give Bran a life that would be free of it. She knew Owen Davies was a good man and would look after the boy, but she also knew that she simply did not love Owen as deeply as he loved her. Not enough to marry him. When things turn out like that, there is nothing a woman can do. It is kindness to go away." She paused. "Not kind to leave Bran, you might say." "That was just exactly what I was going to say," said Will. "Well," said his aunt, "Gwen said something to me in those few days she was here. When we were alone once, she never talked about it, but I have never forgotten, she said, 'If you've once betrayed a great trust, you dare not let yourself be trusted again, because a second betrayal would be the end of the world.' I don't know if you can understand that." "You mean she was frightened of what she might do, and more frightened of what she had done, whatever it was. So she ran away. Poor Bran," said Will. "Poor Owen Davies," said his aunt. There was a gentle knock at the door, and John Rowlands put his head in. "Borda," he said. "Ready, Will?" "Borda, John," said Aunt Jen, smiling at him. Pulling on his jacket, Will turned suddenly and gave her a clumsy hug. "Thank you, Aunt Jen." The smile brightened with pleasure and surprise. "We'll see you when we see you," she said. John Rowlands said as he started the car outside the farm gate. "Fond of you, your auntie." Will held open the door for Pen to scramble up. The dog jumped over the seat onto the back and lay docile on the floor. I'm fond of her too. I'm fond of her too, says my mum. Be careful then, won't you? Roland said. His seamed brown face was innocent of all expression, but the words had force. Will looked at him rather coldly. What do you mean? Well, Roland said carefully, turning the Land Rover into the road, I'm not at all sure what it is that is going on all around us. Will bark, or where it is leading. But those men who know anything at all about the light also know there is a fierceness to its power, like the bare sword of the law, or the white burning of the sun. Suddenly his voice sounded to Will very strong and very Welsh. At the very heart, that is, other things, like humanity and mercy and charity, that most good men hold precious than all else, they do not come first for the light. Oh, sometimes they are there, often indeed, but it is the very long run of concern of you people, with the absolute good ahead of all else. You are like fanatics, your masters at any rate, like the old crusaders. Oh, like certain groups on every belief. Though this is not a matter of religion, of course. At the center of the light there is a cold white flame, just as at the center of the dark there is a great black pit, bottomless as the universe. His warm, deep voice ended, and there was only the roar of the engine. Will looked out over the grey misted fields, silent. There was a great long speech now, John Rowland said awkwardly, but I was only saying, be careful not to forget that there are people in this valley who can be hurt, even in the pursuit of good ends. Will heard again, in his mind, Brand's anguished cry as the dog Cathal was shot dead, and heard his cold dismissal, Go away, go away. And for a second another image unexpected flashed into his mind out of the past. The strong, bony face of Merriman, his master, first of the old ones, cold in judgment of a much-loved figure who, through the frailty of being no more than a man, had once betrayed the cause of the light. He sighed. I understand what you are saying, he said sadly, but you misjudge us because you are a man yourself. For us there is only the destiny, like a job to be done. We are here simply to save the world from the dark. Make no mistake, John. The dark is rising, and will take the world itself very soon if nothing stands in its way. And if that should happen, then there would be no question ever for anyone, either of warm charity or of cold absolute good, because nothing would exist in the world, or the hearts of men, except the bottomless black pit. The charity and the mercy and the humanitarianism are for you. They are the only things by which men are able to exist together in peace. But in this hard case that we the light are in, confronting the dark, we can make no use of them. We are fighting a war. We are fighting life or death. We are fighting for life or death. Not for our life, remember, since we cannot die. For yours. He reached his hand behind him over the back of the seat, and Pen licked it with his floppy wet tongue. Sometimes, Will said slowly, in this sort of a war, it is not possible to pause, to smooth the way for one human being, because even that one small thing could mean an end of the world for the rest. A fine rain began to mist on the windscreen. John Rowlands turned on the wipers, peering forward at the grey world as he drove. He said, It is a cold world you live in, Bakken. I do not think so far ahead myself. I would take the one human being over all the principle all the time. Will slumped down low on his seat, curling into a ball, pulling up his knees. Oh, so would I, he said sadly. So would I if I could. It would feel a lot better inside me, but it wouldn't work. Behind them, Pen leapt unexpectedly to his feet, barking. Will uncoiled like a startled snake. John Rowlands braked sharply, half-turning, and spoke swift and low to the dog. In Welsh, but still Pen stood in the back of the Land Rover, stiff as a stuffed dog, barking furiously, and in the next moment, as if he were observing something outside himself, Will felt his own body jerk stiff as he felt the same force. His fingernails drove into the palms of his hands, John Rowlands did not stop the car, though he had slowed to a crawl. He gave one sharp look out of his near window at the moorland, through the mist, and accelerated again. In a moment or two, Will felt the tension go out of his limbs and sat back, gasping. The dog, too, stopped barking, and in the sudden loud silence lay meekly on the floor, as if he had never moved at all. Rowland said, with a tightness in his deep voice, "We have just come past the empty cottage where we lost the sheep." Will said nothing. His breath was coming fast and shallow, as it had when he first came out of the worst of his illness, and he hunched his shoulders and bent his head beneath the fierce weight of the power of the great king. John Rowlands drove faster, pulling the tough little car around the blind